FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is January 25th, 2017. Hard to believe this month is already gone. So much going on as usual, but here to discuss, Andrew Hoffman. Andy, good morning.
Good morning, and a good strong dollar a day to you too.
Yeah. Hey, well, the dollar is it, right?
Yeah.
Can't beat the dollar.
Right. I mean, I've been talking about it forever. It's like my entire existence is refuting myths from our competitors, competing assets, myths from Wall Street, Washington, myths from people within our own industry who don't understand reality or just want to see what's under their nose. And again, when you talk about the dollar, people refer to the dollar index, which is like 60% euro and maybe 20% yen, and maybe 5 or 6% British pound. So it's not the dollar, it's the dollar against the euro and the yen. And then you got currencies like the yuan that are pegged to the dollar. So how can you say the dollar is strong or weak against something that's pegged to it? The same for the Hong Kong dollar and countless others. And, this whole meme that Trumpflation is going to cause a strong dollar doesn't really mean anything when you're talking primarily against the euro, which is on the verge of collapse. I mean, you're talking about the vice chancellor of Germany just said it the other day. The head of the European Central Bank just said it the other day. I mean, they know the writing's on the wall. And the fact is that Donald Trump himself, just last week, the title of my article was Trump delivers a thermonuclear salvo to the final currency war. He came right out and said what we know all along, that there is no strong dollar policy. He said the dollar is too strong. It's killing us. The strong dollar policy goes back to 1995 when Robert Rubin got named the Treasury Secretary, right, fresh out of Goldman Sachs. And they determined we need to hold the price of gold down because otherwise people will worry about the dollar and inflation. So they started relentlessly saying the words strong dollar policy, even though they didn't do anything that backed that. All they did was lower interest rates to zero and do QE and et cetera, for 15 years, 20 years. And but finally, Trump came in and broke that paradigm forever when he said it was too strong of dollar. Steve Mnuchin, who's going to be the new Treasury Secretary right out of Goldman Sachs, said the same thing. It's very negative for the economy. So we're in a world where the dollar is being pushed down by jawboning over here, but at the same time, all that money printing and chaos overseas is pushing it up. But again, the purchasing power of all currencies is being lost against items of real value, no matter what the dollar index does.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's just a big sinking ship, and the front of the ship is a little higher than the back of the ship, but the whole ship is still sinking.
Exactly. The way I've said it forever is I say it's the totem pole. The dollar is at the top of the totem pole, and the water is slowly washing, or actually rapidly washing over the lower levels of the totem pole, which would be the third and the second world, and even some of the first world, which is trying to jump into the water like the ECB and the Bank of Japan. But eventually the water rises, it's inexorable, and it's going to cover the totem pole top as well. And therefore, people at some point will realize it doesn't matter what the dollar index is doing. We're talking about massive inflation. And that's what Trumpflation is all about, which is why it's so comical that they're trying to create this meme where somehow it's good for stocks and interest rates and lead and copper and oil, but it's not good for gold and silver that we're going to have massive inflation.
Yeah. Well, he certainly is causing quite a stir there in Washington, isn't he?
Yeah, today my article is called Executive Order. And it was really actually, it was inspired by our friend Mike Krieger, because he was talking about the draconian government actions that we're seeing now. And, a few weeks ago, I wrote an article saying draconian government actions will define 2017. And when I see him do 6 executive orders in the first 2 days of his presidency, and some of them are pretty scary, like an executive order to build a wall, across Mexico. I mean, that has an impact. Even an executive order to move forward on these Keystone and Dakota pipelines. Well, that's just going to create a bigger oil glut. Maybe it creates a few jobs when they build it, but huge, we already have an oil glut. So anyway, 6 in 2 days would would put him on a pace to exceed the record, which is, do you know, Kerry, do you know which president has the record for most executive orders?
I would say it's probably FDR if I had to take my guess.
Bingo. Actually, it's funny. I would have said Obama until I looked. But yes, it would surpass his record of 3,500, but he had a 3.5 term presidency, and he did it during the Depression and World War II. And do you know who was second?
Well, that would be Obama.
No, not even close. Actually, Obama's not. Is
Lincoln.
Like
Lincoln.
Nope, Woodrow Wilson during World War One.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So the whole point is that if we're going to be going into historical, political, and economic and monetary crises in the coming years, how many is this guy going to do who's used to, as a CEO, like the biggest, toughest CEO around, throwing his weight around with? And you look at the Constitution. There is absolutely nothing in the Constitution that says any of this stuff is legal.
Well, I mean, in terms of Keystone and the Dakota Access Pipeline, he's just undoing what Obama did. The wall, this is a murky area because there's executive action, okay, and then there's executive orders, all right, that you have to do something in order to tell people what to do as president. How is he supposed to enact or use his authority, right?
By sponsoring legislation. I mean, the president is not meant to be a dictator. I mean, that's what we have 500 congressmen for, to pass laws that he vetoes or not. So he can veto a law. He can propose a law.
Laws don't just.
George Bush is declaring war on everyone, and Obama without the Congress saying anything.
That's a different issue because Congress has the sole authority to declare war. But how does he tell the EPA to do something or not do it? He has to do an executive order. There is no other way to do it in the confines of the system, even though it was never constitutionally laid out. It's kind of like one of those necessary and proper type things. So while there's no legal groundwork for it, it's kind of implied in the whole thing. It's like, what does he do? Does he call in the Secretary of Defense and say, hey, you better do this or that? It's kind of like been enshrined over time, but the abuse that it opens the system up for, no question about it.
We've never had a situation in our lifetimes where presidents were doing this stuff. And again, according to the powers that be in this country, everything's great. It's a booming economy. Everything's fantastic. There's peace everywhere. And yet, we need these executive orders. I executive order to repeal Obamacare. Well, I don't think you can do that. I mean, you have to have laws passed.
They know that. They know that. They know they can't. That executive order kind of just said, do everything you can within the law to lessen the impact of it. So, we'll see. We'll see his adherence to the law. I mean, I agree with you.
I just fear what the executive orders are going to turn into during crisis, such as, for instance, the wars that George Bush declared. I mean, it may be a financial crisis.
They're all illegal.
Military.
All those wars are illegal. I mean, let's face it.
Yes.
From a constitutional aspect, like Vietnam was not a war; it was a police action, right? Because there was never a formal declaration of war. Congress should not allow this stuff, but they've abdicated their role under our system. So there you have it. So anyways, but hey, this is what we've got coming. So the coming debt debacle, do we ever hit the point where there's just too much debt in the world here, Andy, or have we hit it already?
Well, we hit it already, and that's why you're seeing serial collapses of currencies around the world. That's why you're seeing all this social unrest around the world and people voting out the bums and voting in new, even more uncertain
new bums.
People, bums. Yeah. And I mean, look, a Ponzi scheme by definition is something that has to grow larger. And that's what the fiat currency system is. I've been talking about it forever. I mean, it's not a coincidence that debt keeps growing at a faster pace every year, no matter what countries say about how strong their economies are or the progress they're making. I mean, it just you look up and another billion here, another trillion there, everywhere. And the next thing you know, we're starting to see defaults. Most of them thus far have been via hyperinflation or accelerated inflation, depending what country you're talking about. But eventually you're going to see more of the Puerto Rican style stuff. That's one reason why, for instance, the oil price has been so incredibly supported by what I call the oil PPT and this fake OPEC production cut deal, because that's like in the corporate world, that's the weakest link. I mean, we're at 52.90, which is bad enough right now in oil. Oil goes back to mid 40s or lower. You're going to see thousands of bankruptcies around the world instantaneously, and they all know that. And all the junk bonds that are attached to that sector more than any other sector. So, we're talking about juggling lots of balls in the air at the same time, more and more balls, parabolically increasing amount of balls, but the same amount of people trying to do it.
Yeah, well, that's the story of Western finance, huh?
Yeah, it's called the Ponzi scheme. And, again, we're in this honeymoon period. Again, it was supposed to be a nightmare. Remember, the whole year was buy stocks and smash gold if Hillary Clinton is, because she's going to win. And then as soon as she didn't win, they changed their mind. No, buy stocks and sell gold because Donald Trump's going to win. And we're going to have a Trumpflation where he does infrastructure spending and everything is great. And by the way, this morning, my article, it was called Executive Order. I started it out by doing a little research, and you probably can guess what the result was. I said, let me look at what happened with all previous presidents when they came in, or recent presidents, and I looked at Clinton and Bush and Obama and now Trump, and in all cases, with the exception of Bush. Bush came in with a split majority, with a split in the houses, only because he came in right at the end of the bubble. And so there was still, even though Clinton had lost his majorities, he had kind of like a split. And as soon as we went 1 or 2 years in, then Bush got his majority, because then everyone started to blame Clinton for everything that happened. But with that exception, and just that 1 year in which Bush ultimately got the same as everyone else, Obama came in and they swept out all the Republicans, and now Trump comes in, they sweep out all the Democrats. And in all cases, Bush, Obama, and Trump, they come right in with fiscal stimulus. In Bush's case, it was the what do you call his act I wrote? I think it was just the Stimulus Act of 2008. He came in as soon as he got his majority, and he gave everyone rebate checks. And what did that do? It doubled the debt for us. And then Obama came in within 2 weeks of Obama being in office. He passed the American Reinvestment and Stimulus Act or whatever. And what did that do for us? It doubled the debt. And so Trump's going to do the same thing, only this time he doesn't even have any means of financing it. We have the debt ceiling suspension ends in mid-March. So, are we to expect that Congress is just going to be like, particularly Republicans that supposedly are against debt ceiling increases, right? Remember John Boehner and all that stuff? They're just going to come in and say, sure, raise the debt ceiling by $2 trillion, do your infrastructure. Hey, cut taxes as well. Last year, the debt went up $1.2 trillion. Let it go up $2 trillion this year. Does anyone really think that's going to happen? And even if he got what he wanted, we're talking about the things he's trying to do don't produce revenues. Building the military does not produce revenues. Building a wall across China definitely does against Mexico definitely does not increase revenues. And building roads and bridges, or rebuilding them, is the equivalent of digging holes and putting dirt back in them. It's simply creating jobs just for the sake of jobs that don't produce anything. So again, massive deficits and debts, and then the jobs are over. Nothing to show for it.
Yeah. This is true. It's kind of a one-shot deal.
It's essentially the model of China, right? Build ghost cities. We have the greatest infrastructure in the world. We have 10 million roads and trains and roads that no one is driving on, houses that no one living in. And we drove interest rates down and devalued the yuan. So everyone bought houses that no one even lives in. It can't miss, right? It's a guaranteed success.
Great formula.
Yeah.
It's a great formula. So we don't know what the heck we're doing here. So it doesn't encourage savings. Savings is the key, right? Savings is sustainable, right?
Well, no one has any savings. They're not getting it. We know what they're doing. They have a plan. The plan is to kick the can. And, someone asked me yesterday on a podcast, they said, well, is Trump going to stop these things? Is he going to stop the Fed and audit the Fed? And, is there going to be, a stopping of all these things that have been going on and, like draining the swamp? And I'm like, well, of course not. you take your foot off the gas pedal for 1 second, 1 millisecond, the game's over.
Yeah.
If you don't keep kicking the can, if you don't keep saying we're going to do more stimulus and keep saying, yes, the economy is growing and fake the GDP data, inflation data, and the PMI manufacturing indices, diffusion indices, and hold the price of gold down, hold stocks up, and say that everything is great. If you don't keep doing all these things, the game ends immediately. I mean, it's already ended for so many countries around the world whose currencies have crashed, and they're having political regime changes. But eventually, it'll get at the totem pole too. And Trump there's nothing he's doing. Most of the stuff he's doing isn't even helpful. It's just more a matter of public relations. I mean, can you imagine? Again, trying to tell these auto companies, you need to start making huge investments in the United States, okay? Mm-hmm. For one, perhaps he hasn't taken a look at that car sales have peaked and are falling. Even the president of Ford, the CEO, just 2 months ago, came out and said, sales have peaked. We're at a new lower plateau right now. We have a record inventory to sales ratio, record delinquencies on all these exploding subprime auto loans. We have record amounts of used and leased cars coming off of their leases in the next 2 or 3 years, which are going to depress prices further. So now is the time that he wants you to invest in a place where you have massively lower returns as opposed to, say, Mexico. I mean, it's so idiotic. We don't even have the skill to do it anymore. All these people don't even exist anymore. And a lot of the jobs have been replaced by robots anyway. I mean, that's what we're talking about at Davos, because you don't need a lot of people for assembly line stuff. And why should people on assembly lines get paid that much anyway? I mean, no offense to labor, but it's just labor. And if you didn't have the unions behind you, you wouldn't get paid that much anyway. So what does he do? He's going to have meetings with unions now. Now the unions are his buddies. I mean, ridiculous.
Yeah, he's going to fix it all. Just negotiations.
He's tough. He just
make better deal.
He just has to be tough. If I tweet a lot and I tell everyone I'm super tough and I'm going to do all this stuff, then everything will get better. And it's just nothing. It's empty. I mean, it's the complete opposite of Obama's modus operandi, but it does the same damage. And again, let's get to that debt ceiling suspension ending in 2 months from now, when he's trying to pass through $1 trillion infrastructure that doesn't pay itself back and tax cuts that definitely don't pay themselves back.
Yeah. Well, going to get interesting real soon, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, interest rates, I wrote that 2.5% enough said article 2 weeks ago saying this seems to be the toppish level. It was like back in 2014, I wrote 3% enough said right at the top. It was right up at 3%. And I basically said rates can't go higher because the economy is going to crash. And then it immediately crashed to 2.6%, the 10-year yield. Nice. And it sat there for a few weeks. And then I wrote 2.6%. I said, it's obvious it can't go higher from here. It's too high. Crashes down to 1.3%. And here we are with this big surge in Trumpflation expectations because he's going to do all this. And sure enough, no matter what he does and no matter how high they push the dollar, although it's come off since his thermonuclear salvo about the dollar being too strong, 2.499 right now. It just has trouble going through there because, let's face it, you go through that 2.5 level and all of a sudden, remember, we've had crashing mortgage applications down to the Lehman lows, refinance applications. Right. Think about all the debt, the variable rate debts that have to reset at these levels. Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's like a tax, higher interest rates, all the massive debt in this country that has to be refinanced or new debt. I mean, it's higher costs. So you go any higher than the $20 trillion of debt that the government has and the municipalities, and it kills everything. So, how are you going to play this Trumpflation meme? I mean, there's a reason why, I wrote that article. And then right after Trump said his weak dollar thing, which, by the way, only makes inflation higher and forces the Fed's hand even more. Bill Dudley comes out and says, I mean, it's like we're in a time warp of idiocy back to like 2005 or 6. He says, people really need to start cashing out the equity in their houses,
right,
and get growth again.
What a great idea, right? What a great idea.
I mean, the only people who have equity in their houses now are the high end of the market, where you've had this echo bubble based on all the free money that Wall Street bought up in like New York, which is falling, and San Francisco, which is falling. The rest of the nation doesn't even have home equity of any kind. And they certainly wouldn't be leveraging it out if they could right now because of what they went through the last time around. But people have record low savings. Now interest rates are going up. So how are you going to do that, Bill? How are you going to get everyone to cash out? Well, of course, you're going to do QE4 and try to push rates down again. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I mean, you're really going to be hawkish and raise rates 4 times? I mean, you kidding me? We already had the dollar surging against everyone else with all the other currencies crashing. Can you imagine what the dollar will do and interest rates will do if the Fed starts raising interest rates as if in this horrible economy? It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm off the charts right here because it's like enough already with this Trumpflation thing. It's so out of context. It so makes absolutely no sense, and it's so going to end badly.
Yeah, well, that's the main thing. It's going to end badly. We know that because what can happen here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think the stuff will get done. I've said from the beginning, and I supported him more than anyone just because I didn't want Hillary Clinton there. But I wrote the Turning on Trump audio blog the day, 2 days after he got in or 3 days after. And I said, there's nothing that he says that he's going to do that he can do. He can talk all he wants. Do you really think there's going to be a wall built across the border of Mexico, like a giant wall with like billions of dollars of security? Can you imagine what an undertaking that will be and how much it'll cost and what will be the political fallout and how will Mexico respond to all this?
I think the wall is going to be built. I think that's one of the things he will do because there's certain things they'll have to do in order to be reelected, and that is one of them. If he doesn't build that wall, he has no chance of being reelected. So
all right. Well,
he's going to build the wall. The wall is going to be built. He's already done the executive order. The law's already been passed to build it. And the money's in the budget, a la
taxpayers.
Well, a la Obama's slush funds that are in there that he's been using to pay down the Obamacare, humongous losses. So
all right, build the wall.
It's going to be built.
It is definitely a positive thing if you build a wall and try to create a hostile enemy at your southern border, which we pretty much have already.
We have a hostile enemy. They've been invading us for 40 years here, Andy.
No, I'm talking about now politically, they are going to be going from an ally to a bitter enemy in terms of trade wars, and it's not going to be pretty. And they have more cards than we do because they have the low-cost labor.
They've been an enemy. Let's get real here. So that wall is going to be built because his whole candidacy was built upon it. And if he doesn't build it, he has no possibility of being reelected. No, the wall is going to be built. There's no question in my mind. It will
build
be built.
The wall. Help gold prices go up higher.
Whatever happens, that's baked in the cake. But other things, I think thinking that you can talk up the economy is kind of ridiculous because the economy is a victim of 80 years worth of arguably 103 years worth of bad policies. So it doesn't just get reversed because this guy gets elected. He can't save the system. I wrote that newsletter a couple of weeks ago. You don't just get in there and say, oh, I'm going to save the system. If the system crumbles in Europe, like you said, the totem pole, how is it going to be saved here, right? How do you save it here?
Of course. I mean, that's what politicians do. I don't blame them for that. I mean, they'll talk up, Obama will talked up the economy every minute he was there. And he ended by saying this was the greatest economy in history, thanks to me. And Trump was saying the market, everything was a disaster. But as soon as he got in, he took credit. Hey, the stock market went up because of me. Everything's great because of me. Look at all the excitement.
Yeah.
So, then when it goes down, he'll say, don't worry, everything is great. It's still great. I've made America great again. Reelect me.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah, make America great again. Right? I'm all in favor. So, hey, I wish him the best of luck, but let's get realistic here. Anyways, well, that's it for this week. Find Andy's work over at milesfranklin.com. I spent a lot of time with Andy Schechtman over there. They got some new offshore storage options up in our neighbor to the north. And hey, while you're at it,
let me add to that, Kerry, because I've talked about our Brinks, Montreal, and Vancouver segregated storage for some time because I've been personally in the program in Montreal since its beginning, which is 2011 or 12. But I just now have become a customer of our new private safe deposit box program. It's in Toronto and Vancouver. I'm using the one in Toronto, and it's spectacular. I mean, it's like no other program that we know of anywhere. I just got in the mail. You get a certificate. They authenticated certificate saying this is what your holdings are, and 2 keys. These are the only 2 keys to my box in Toronto in Brinks.
Right.
The only 2 keys. I will hide them in 2 different places. No one will ever know where they are or what they are for. And the only way that I can get to my product is either I go up there, I send it up there with someone and have it officially authorized so that Brinks let them in, or or I send one of the keys up to Brinks myself and say, I'm sending some gold out. Can you open it up and take it out? Or I have gold coming in. Can you open it up and take it in? I mean, it's just the most amazing program in the world. I'm so thrilled about it.
Yeah, we should specify that it is a one-key safe deposit box. Like you go into your bank, you have a key and they have a key, and you can't get into the box without their key. But with this box, you get in with your key only into, it's in their depository, but you have your key and you get in. So that is like a pretty cool concept. I've never heard of that anywhere in the world. So
yeah, we worked hard on that. And the best part is, we have always believed that our Brinks segregated storage account programs in Montreal and Vancouver were FATCA and FBAR compliant. Based on we did a lot of work talking to a lot of attorneys. Of course,
IRS opinions.
Well, the IRS won't give you a straight answer, saying that these are not directly held accounts in financial institutions. So we are quite sure that the segregated storage is compliant, and thus far no one has said anything from the government about it. Although you can never be 100% sure because of the vagary of the writing. But in the case of the private safe deposit box, in which we literally the owner, meaning like me in this case, is the only person on the planet who has the keys, it is unquestionably directly held and thus FBAR and FATCA compliant. So we think in so many different ways that this is a unique program that people should look into. And again, email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com or call us at 800-822-8080.
All right. Hey, and any questions, comments on this interview, any others we have on FSN, just send me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. That's kl@kerrylutz.com. Andy, we will talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.